Hey everyone, so someone in Blizzard said really dumb things again, and that means it's time for one of these videos. Essentially, that's it for Warlords of Draenor. Expansion over, folks. You can, continue your raids, which are awesome, by the way. No harm to the raids. They're brilliant. I'm loving Hellfire Citadel so far. Or you can keep on Apex's missioning, because that is it until the next expansion. Yeah, quite the interesting thing to hear, actually, and that is in spite, in fact, of Ian Hazzikostas saying, or sort of alluding to the fact that there may or may not be a upcoming patch in Warlords of Draenor back in the Polygon interview, because, it's a Blizzard interview. They talk in lawyer speak, they kind of use double words, they use weasel words, mights, maybes, perhapses, and things like that. So essentially, to give you the lowdown of the news here, and the format of this video, by the way, I'll give you the lowdown of the news, I'll go over what Corey Stockton said, and then I'm going to talk about when the next expansion might come out. I'm going to talk a bit about value for money, because I think there is definitely an issue here when it comes to value for money, and just some other things, potential of 6.3, and while some of this is going to seem sort of negative, I think there's a silver lining in that Blizzard may have learned their lesson from Warlords of Draenor, and some content, maybe a year in the future, whatever, could be really good and could be to our liking. Of course, anything could be, but, I've got some reasoning. Anyway, what did Corey say? Well, it was an interview with Mammy Twink, and whenever they asked him if patch 6.2 is the final patch of the expansion, well, he basically said, we don't want people waiting, a year for new content between Warlords of Draenor and the next expansion. And he also said that Hellfire Citadel is the final planned raid. Now, he said planned raid, but, well, that pretty much means there's no other raid in development, and raids take quite a while to make. So basically, Hellfire Citadel, that's your final raid of Warlords of Draenor. Now, Mamby Twink also asked him about the idea of patch 6.3, and what Corey had to say to that was, not really a great deal. He actually just talked about patch 6.2.x instead, which is the patch that, yes, it enables flying, awesome, love that, doesn't actually enable any new content, though. So that is, it's a little bit of a problem, and when he was asked about Grommash being the Grommash not being the final boss, and it being Archimonde and all that, he talked about the story changes, how they decided, let's just do Archimonde when they were making Hellfire Citadel, and he said, it's clear to anyone who's played the story about how we started in Tanaan and ended in Tanaan. You know what, it does seem like he's forgotten that Tanaan wasn't even supposed to be an endgame zone. Well, I suppose it was, but it was technically supposed to be the zone that you would have dinged 100 in, but then we found out in a Gamescom interview with Tom Chilton that that actually would not indeed be the case. So that's it for Warlords of Draenor. It doesn't look like they have any patches that are really planned in the works. And what worries me is that when we just think about when this next expansion could come out, it doesn't paint a pretty picture for the next year of World of Warcraft. Now, when the new expansion comes out, first of all, yeah, I'm going to be skeptical as hell about anything they say at BlizzCon, because I think it would be very unethical of me to start being all hyped and hyping you guys up about an expansion that we don't really, sort of see solidly at BlizzCon when, after 2013 and the sort of problems with them selling us one Warlords of Draenor and delivering a completely different Warlords of Draenor, we're going to have to take all that with a pinch of salt, but still, the next expansion could be amazing. We just don't know, and with what Corey said here, with the timing, we're getting into some issues. Now, Mammy Twink also asked him about some stuff about the number of patches per expansion, and to that, Corey had to say that some expansions have 4 patches, and some have 2 large ones, like 6.1 and 6.2. Did you see the thing that he said there? 2 large patches, like 6.1 and 6.2. Now, I don't think 6.2 is the most amazing thing ever. We're not going to harp on about that. I do think it's got some good qualities, though. I've been really enjoying my my Mythic Dungeons and my Hellfire Citadel, so that's all been good. And yeah, I think you can definitely say 6.2, it's a large patch. It's got a raid, it's got a zone, it's kind of, the full affair of a large patch. He called 6.1 a large patch. I don't think anyone says 6.1 is a large patch. Most of all, Ian Bloody Hazzikostas, the other lead designer for World of Warcraft. He said, in fact, that naming it patch 6.1 was a mistake. He said it was a minor patch, and that they should have called it 6.0.5. So we've got Ian saying that 2 weeks ago, And then this week, we've got Corey saying, oh, this is a large patch. Now, what really worries me here is that what he just described is Warlords of Draenor being a one patch long expansion, and everything that he said in this interview would indicate that's it for Warlords, we're getting one patch. Now look, patch 6.1, technically it was a patch, I'm not counting it as a major content patch. Does it live up to patch 5.1? No, it doesn't. It's not, I'm not counting it, screw it. 6.1, you may as well not exist, and you know, you might think that's just me being salty. Ian has a Costas, doesn't even count patch 6.1 as being a proper sort of numbered patch. He says it's 6.0.5. It's kind of a little update to 6.0, not really its own new thing. So, one patch long expansion, that has got some serious value for money implications for me. Now, just moving on to finish off what Corey was saying, he said that as they get closer to their overall goal of having smaller expansion, or gaps between expansions, so basically not having a 5.4 all again, which I'm totally all for, but he also said the number of patches per expansion decreases. No, Corey, it doesn't need to. He kept on talking about, you know, how they, when they sort of scope out patches, they think, oh, how do things feel? Do we need a patch right now? Lots of soft little weasel words and double talk that mean that they can't really be held to anything. It's sort of annoying. I wish at times that they would just do an interview where someone would have the balls to actually just say things directly to their community, because I don't think, you know, people overall are in the sort of best mood with the World of Warcraft developers at the minute. Well, not them, just, you know, the decisions they make. Because I'm sure Corey and Ian are both lovely people at the end of the day. And they're clearly both very intelligent people. Because from what I've heard about the Blizzard hiring process, pretty rigorous and all that stuff. I would imagine that a lot of the pressures that are, you know, leading to the problems that they've been having they're coming from upstairs, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not really them deciding, haha, we will release half the content and the players will love it. I don't think any game designer's actually thinking that. You know, you're in the game designer job because you want to make a game that's really good. And I mean, Ian has a Costas. He was a lawyer before he joined Blizzard Entertainment. A lawyer can make more money than a game designer from what I've seen of numbers, so I think he's definitely in this for the passion. I just think there's maybe some weird stuff coming from upstairs that's screwing him over. Now, let's just talk about patch 6.3. We pretty much know at this stage that 6.3 isn't going to exist. However, if you will just bear with me for 1 minute, I was actually, until today, so yesterday, I was really excited about the notion of patch 6.3, even if it didn't mean a full raid tier, and I suppose some of the wording that Corey used was weaselly enough so that maybe 6.3 could happen and maybe it won't be a raid tier, but at the end of the day, who the hell knows? I mean, half the shit they say never actually comes to pass and is, you know, ends up being bollocks anyway, but Ian said some really encouraging things in his interview 2 weeks ago. Really encouraging things. He faced up to all the criticism, and he nearly apologized for patch 6.2's main world content. He talked about how the reputations were added in late on. He said we can do more in the future. The content we're working on right now addresses these problems. He said lots of encouraging things, and the takeaway that I got from that interview that he did is, right, this guy knows they've messed up. He kind of knows the crack, and he knows that, say, these you know, Apex's things aren't good. He knows these reps aren't good. He also sort of said, right, 6.2, look, it started development in November. There's not really a great deal we can do, you know, now that it's like April, to completely fix and rejuvenate the patch. So we're just going to have to band-aid a few things and put it out there. And that's pretty much what they've did. And yes, those band-aids are nice, but of course, they are not complete fixes. Still, he had me thinking in my head, right, here's your lead designer, he is saying all these things, he's admitting to his problems, which, by the way, a lot of respect for that, always, you know, sort of hands up when people do stuff good, you know, clap, whatever, good. But, because he said all that, I thought, right, 6.3, if they are starting to develop that now, so that it comes out in a few months, it could be great. It could have full reps. It could be in Farallon. You could have the Naru coming down. You could have, like, you could have Tempest Keep 2.0. You could have a few new dungeons inside there. You could have the Laughing Skull Orcs as or something like that, I don't know, as a full reputation. There's some Draenei Exile people there. You could have them as a full reputation. I mean, a proper story one. You could have some really, really amazing content that takes into account all the pros and cons of both Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor. I thought that was possible for 6.3. 6.3, not going to be a thing. That's got me being a bit of a sad panda. However, if they do understand all of these problems, what does that mean for the next expansion? Well, it means the next expansion's probably going to benefit from a lot of stuff. I think the next expansion could be good. I think they've learned a lot of lessons, and if they apply those right, then fine. And also, there's been a bunch of times when Ian Hazzikostas has said about how Blizzard tend to pendulum very hard on issues. Well, if he's understanding that and recognizing that now, maybe in the next expansion's content, we will see, we'll sort of see that they've decided to make more nuanced changes, which are sort of nice and good. So, next expansion could be great. I was hoping that sort of goodness would come in 6.3, but apparently not. Let's talk about the launch date of the next expansion, okay? Because that is a very, very, very big and interesting issue. First of all, when does it make the most sense for Blizzard to launch another expansion? Well, I would say May to June 2016. Why is that? That's when the Warcraft movie's coming in. Now, Legendary Pictures is going to be pumping so many millions into the advertising for Warcraft, because that's how these movies go. They just get so much budget for the advertising, they get the word out there, they get the brand out there. If they can have both an expansion and a big fucking movie coming out, which, let's be honest, hopefully will be really good. It's Duncan Jones, he makes good movies. That's kind of like their double punch of complete amazing success right there. So that's when it makes the most sense for the next expansion to come out. Of course, that would actually mean that we would have a full year of patch 6.2. Because think about it, it's July now. Okay, 11 months of patch 6.2. I don't think patch 6.2 can last 11 months. I'm sorry, and I know a lot of people are hyped about it at the minute. And, they're enjoying the new format of the Apexes, they're enjoying the sort of alting gameplay and the gearing, and I will say I think the gearing is a lot better in this patch than it was in the past. But I don't think this patch really has the longevity. I've got a full kind of pre-prepared, well-edited game design video about just longevity and how I think maybe some past bits of content maybe nailed the idea of longevity a bit more. But at the end of the day, day 1 of Tanan Jungle, day 60 of Tanan Jungle, the exact same thing. Day 1 of the Isle of Thunder, day 30 of the Isle of Thunder, different. Day 1 of the Molten Front, day 30 of the Molten Front, different. Same goes for the Argent Tournament. A lot of that content had a lot more longevity to it. I don't think we're going to see that for patch 6.2, and that's what really scares me, is that if this expansion is coming out to coincide with the movie, how do they tide things over? It's really hard to think, because the ideal timeline in my head would have been BlizzCon 2015 is when they announced the new expansion. Then we go into a sort of beta, in February, January, after the holidays for Blizzard, and then it's got to launch sort of just maybe a month before the World of Warcraft, or the Warcraft movie. I think that would have been the perfect way to do things. So, naturally enough, in my head, if we had have had a Farallon patch that was going on in between those events, it would have tided it over perfectly. So we would have had 6.0, okay, maybe it lasted 7 months, 8 months, a bit too long. Then we would have had 6.2, then we would have had the 6.3 raid patch. And then 6 months later, we'd be going right into a new expansion. I think that would have been a beautiful way to do it, and it could have worked so well. Not going to be the case, though, because they don't have stuff planned, and it takes many months to make stuff. So, what does this leave us with in terms of the next expansion? Well, Blizzard keeps on saying they don't want these big expansion gaps. If they were to go with that previous timeline, we'd have a year of this patch, which isn't as bad as, 14 months of patch... Actually, no, I think it's worse than 14 months of patch 5.2, because patch 5.2 also had patch 5.3, 5.2, and 5.1, which all had substantial bits of content in them to lean on. If patch 6.2 was to last for a year, the only other patch it's got to rely on is the launch content of Draenor, which, as we know, is rife with problems and not really having a lot in the world, and 6.1, which essentially added nothing. So I think 14 months of 6.2 would be a lot more painful than the 14 months of 5.2. But still, getting back to my point, if the next expansion was to come out next May or June, that would be a year of this current patch. And let's just assume Corey means his word, and they are going to reduce the amount of time. That means we're getting expansion a little bit quicker. Now, previously, every single World of Warcraft expansion has been announced at BlizzCon. That would not really be possible to do with this way, because BlizzCon right now, like, it's in November. So they would have to announce it in November and release it in January or February if they were to have a sort of even a half acceptable timeline. I don't think that's going to happen, honestly, because beta tests take a long time. You got to think about it here with Warlords of Draenor. They had like 2 months, or maybe a month and a half, whatever, of the friends and family stuff. Then they had the alpha, then they had the beta. It was damn near half a year that Warlords of Draenor was in testing, and it still felt pretty rushed once you got past the amazing leveling and the amazing art. And of course the amazing raids. So, yeah, that prospect kind of worries me. Now, another thing that they could do is they could announce the new expansion at Gamescom and try to get it out before the end of the year. In my head, if the next expansion was to take the flaws of the previous one into account, and take the positives and the negatives of both MoP and WoD, and, be announced at Gamescom, jump straight into a beta, and then maybe the World of Warcraft expansion's launches, like, right after BlizzCon or something, maybe that could be cool, because, World of Warcraft at BlizzCon, maybe 4 years ago, it was absolutely needed, but nowadays they've got Overwatch, they've got Heroes, they've got more games, they don't really need to save World of Warcraft for BlizzCon, so they could announce it at Gamescom, which I think would be something a bit out of left field, but hey, it could happen. So that's roughly what I'm thinking for the World of Warcraft patches. If it comes out next May, then we are in big trouble. I've talked to people on Twitter, including other YouTube people, many YouTube people, in fact, and Twitch people, and Asmongold said, and he's someone whose opinion I respect a great deal, about the idea of 6.2 lasting a very long time. And I think he was being serious, said, that's the kind of stuff that's going to kill the game there, is a year of this patch. And I've got to agree with him completely, so that terrifies me. Now, if we're having a February release of the next expansion, then yeah, maybe I'm more on board with that if the expansion is good, and they could do a crazy thing and do a Gamescom. Now, as I said before, on the topic of this expansion, I know they can make amazing leveling content. I know they can make amazing raid content. I know that Brian Halinka probably goes to sleep with a cold sweat about Ashran every night. And I'm pretty sure the PvP team is going to put in some new battlegrounds, some new things, because they have got to know that the PvP community doesn't really want another Ashran. I think as far as dungeons go, I'm worried. There's a chance that they will add mid-expansion dungeons and things like that. What I personally hope for is they do lots of winged dungeons. You could have as many unique tile sets as WoD had, but just have 3 or 4, or maybe, like 2 or 3 dungeons per tile set. That would work. So look, next expansion, we can't judge it right now. We don't even know what the fucking thing's name is. It could be awesome, but there's another big topic here. Value for money. The value for money for World of Warcraft Warlords of Draenor is so bad if what Corey Stockton just said is true. We paid £10, $10, €10 more, I think roughly, for this expansion. Now, for those of us in the UK, we had our subscription price increased by £1, and I know that a bunch of other regions have had their subscription prices increased as well. They have also ramped up the in-game monetization. Before Warlords of Draenor, during the big 14-month, period, we had the Brewpup be released, we had the Sky Reaver, we had the Fey Dragon, we had the, the Steel Horse thingy, we had that. In Warlords of Draenor, we had the Grinning Reaver, we also had the Mystic Runesaber, which really oddly came like the day after the 3 mil sub drop, which was such a stupid time to announce that, or to, release that thing. So, the content in this expansion, if what Corey said is true, is tiny. We have had 1 patch. Now, in Wrath of the Lich King, you bought your box, and then of course you did pay your 2 years of subscription. However, buying that box got you sort of on the train for 4 major patches. With Warlords of Draenor, we bought a box that was 10 of your currency more expensive. We paid a subscription fee that was more expensive, and we were also monetized in a far more aggressive manner. Yet, we are getting 1/4 the number of patches in terms of the post-release stuff. Look, I want there to be less of a gap between expansions, like what Corey said, but Corey said that having less of a gap between these expansions means less patches per expansion. No, it doesn't, Corey. No, it doesn't. If you want to rush out patches to just kind of get as many sort of $50 packages as you can, sure, it means less patches per expansion. But here's what I would say. I think more people would rather have a 2-year-long expansion that is fleshed the fuck out. Draenor could have been so much. We could have had Farallon. We could have, our shipyard could have had us visiting the various islands of this beautiful world that the art team created. No, is that a thing? No. We basically got the amount of leveling zones it was supposed to ship with, plus a raid. That is what we got with Warlords of Draenor. The value proposition is so bad with this expansion, and if Warlords of Draenor was to last 2 years and have 4 content patches, maybe 3 of those are raids, then fine, I am happy. Say Mists of Pandaria. I think if you see Mists, right, and even at the time, I probably gave it a bad rap for some points that were maybe a bit too, whatever, fidgety. But if you think about Mists, if patch 5.4 had have only lasted 7 months, I don't think Mists would have went down in the same way that it did. The 14-month of patch 5.2 is a meme at this stage. It's ridiculous. Everyone thinks it's ridiculous. All the players think it's silly. The developers think it's silly. None of us want to happen again. We can all shake hands. Good. Happy. But if it wasn't for that 14-month thing, what do you have? Well, you have an expansion that came out with a rocky launch, unfortunately, because of the balancing of some things, the way the dailies were placed. You then had patch 5.1, which I think had awesome story. Didn't contribute to the daily problem in the most positive and helpful way, unfortunately. You then had patch 5.2, which had so much variety. You had the Isle of Thunder, you had a new raid, you had the treasure trove thing, you had, I think, the new scenarios were 5.3, but you had quite a lot of new stuff, new reps, new mounts, and mounts that actually had a new skin and a new model. I thought that was nice. You had a lot of variety in 5.2. 5.3 is a funny patch. I think I'm one of the only people who thought it had some amazing ideas behind it. I don't think it was executed perfectly, and I think it was crap for the Alliance. We didn't get that cool quest with Thrall that you Horde guys got, but I think a lot of the ideas behind 5.3 could have been used a lot better in various other places in the game. And then we had the Timeless Isle, which, it was sort of a known quantity soon enough, but hey, I'll give them credit. At the time, it was new and it was fresh. If we had have moved on to a new expansion a few months after that, 8, 7, whatever, then I think MoP would have just went down for too many dailies at the start, but then it did a really good job of retaining players, and perhaps the theme didn't really resonate with players. But still, for the boxed price, we got big patches with lots of stuff in it, lots of story, lots of raids, good quality raids as well. Bar Heart of Fear, because, hey, I hate the Heart of Fear, but maybe I just don't like bugs or something. Yeah, that's how that would be remembered. Wrath of the Lich King, again, we got 4 big patches for that boxed price. Right now, we've paid more money, we've paid $50, and what have we got? Another Zone of Apexis dailies and a raid. I mean, the PvP people, they haven't got any new content in patch 6.1. There's no new content. It's just rebadging the old stuff. And actually, if you check out, speaking of Asmongold, check out his most recent video about PvP, because he's really bringing light to an issue that I had no idea it was that severe, about faction imbalance and things like that. So do check that out. I'm sure if you're a PvPer, you don't need to be told twice, but if you're a PvEer, maybe it's going to be a sort of useful and interesting insight to you. So, yes, what worries me actually is the value for money proposition. If they, in the future, are going to have patches or expansions which have got the same amount of content as Warlords of Draenor, then I'm a bit worried. Because, just even the amount of patches, I mean, with MoP, you had a few months, 2 or 3 months, 5.1. You had a few months after that, 5.2. A few months after that, 5.3. A few months after that, 5.4. With Warlords of Draenor, it was launch. A few months later, we have a patch that may as well not exist, and in all intents and purposes, 8 months until a proper content update. So yes, I am a little bit perturbed. I think the next expansion could be absolutely fucking amazing, and I would like to hope that with patch 6.3 and the stuff that's going on with Warlords of Draenor at the minute, my personal hope and desire, and maybe this is me being an optimist, I'm not normally, but maybe I am in this instance, right? Maybe I'm being an optimist right now, and I'm thinking that the reason why Warlords of Draenor feels so sparse is because Blizzard just wants to get on with it and get to the new expansion where they have a fresh slate where they cannot do the same mistakes. I really hope that's true. I think if the next expansion is a dud, then it spells a really big problem for the future of World of Warcraft. It's what Total Biscuit said all those years ago, the only thing that'll kill WoW is WoW itself. I hope that doesn't happen, because I really like this game, and I've got a hell of a history with it. And if 6.2 does last for a year, then I think what we're going to see is Final Fantasy XIV really having a big nom out of the WoW subscriber numbers. I'd still say that WoW would be bigger by the end of that year, because it's so titanic, and the sunk cost fallacy, of course, which is so very powerful. But, Final Fantasy, it just has its expansion come out. They had actually an interview. Now, this is something I also wanted to talk about, and this is weasel words. And the crap, we have a dev interview with Blizzard, and they answer everything ambiguous. I can't even speak. I know that word. Whatever, you know what I mean. They sort of ambiguity, yeah. There's nothing but ambiguity in all of their answers. Ian's a lawyer. Sometimes before the 6.2 interview, you can nearly tell that he was a lawyer in the sort of answers that he gave. They're also non-committal, right? We had that going on yet. With Final Fantasy XIV, their lead designer, I've completely forgotten his name, but he went out and said, oh yeah, our next expansion, our next patch is coming out in, I think it was late August or something. It's going to have X, Y, and Z content, and every single patch we do is going to have a major boss. And he just was he sat down and he said, right, here's what we're going to do. Straight up, we respect the players, we're telling them what the deal is. Right now, it feels a little bit like we're being strung on. Every time we hear from the developers, it's weasel words. It's, ooh, it may be better. I was all hyped up about maybe 6.3 existing, because Ian Hazukosa just said, we've still got more story to tell, and the Polygon person who did the interview said, yeah, there'll be a patch after 6.2 that's major, that has story in it. I was all excited about that, as you could probably tell. In fact, I haven't actually wrote it yet, and I don't know if I will even bother now, but I had a video in the works about what I would have wanted from Farallon, and it would have been so cool. I actually completely geeked off about this whole thing with Noble on Final Boss a year ago, which was fun. But yeah, Farallon could have been so cool. But I was all excited about that. And it turns out I was being led on there, because now Corey says, nah, we're not actually doing that. So I think in terms of communication, they need to respect their players, because it is getting to the stage where it's very hard to respect anything that they say, or really take it as meaning that much. Now, the patch 6.2 interviews in which Ian sort of owned up to their mistakes, they were genuine. I hope he was being genuine, but that was a real step in the right direction. And now we just see this stuff. And that's not even covering the fact that Corey kept on talking about how fresh and exciting the shipyard was, which I don't think many people actually think. Somehow. It's a bit of a hunch, right? It's a hunch, guys. It's a hunch. But I don't think... Do you like the shipyard? I don't think that many people do. I mean, I love the art. And I think it would have been so cool if we could have been gallivanting around the high seas in our flagship. Maybe if it was just visiting islands, but hey, it's not a thing. It's a mission table. Yeah, so that's about all I want to talk about in this video. I know it's a bit off the cuff. I know it's not the usual sort of edited quality. But I just felt like the most honest way to do this video was to just sort of speak frankly. Oh yeah, the last point I wanted to make is when BlizzCon comes, or whenever Gamescom comes and they announce this next expansion, I am just going to preempt everything with, look, this sounds great. This may not happen. We might get the opposite. We might even get, I don't know, fucking sea lions. I don't know, well, someone just posted a picture of a sea lion in my guild chat, so there you go. That's maybe what we'll get, but hashtag random, right? We don't even know if what they say will turn out to be half true. So that's what worries me about whenever BlizzCon comes up. I actually do have a bit of an ethical quandary with myself, where if they say stuff that impresses me and makes me really happy, I want to communicate that to you lot, because we're here because we sort of love World of Warcraft, right? But ethically, I think it would be irresponsible of me to do so, because then am I leading other people on? Am I a part of this machine that, am I maybe causing people to, invest their hard-earned money in something that might not deliver? it's at that stage where I just find it hard to give them the benefit of the doubt because, like, I care about the audience that watch my videos, like, I care about the game, and I don't want to mislead people. So we'll see what happens with BlizzCon. Maybe there will be a 6.3. Maybe Corey wasn't even talking sense. Who the hell knows? And I suppose that's the issue with their communication. Anyway, I've been rambling on for quite long enough. That's my thoughts on the topic, however disjointed they may be. Let me know what you think about this, and let me know what you think specifically about the idea of World of Warcraft Warlords of Draenor having one major content patch for your $50 and however many months of £10 sterling per month. Woohoo. Oh, and don't forget that they also increased the price of many of the in-game services across the board, which was a nice little thing to do. Anyway, I think that's enough from me. Tomorrow is going to be that video on Albion Online that I talked about. Like, I know it is a part of a paid promo, so I'm actually wary of being visibly excited about that game, so I'll see how that turns out, but in a way, it's nice to play something that's a little bit of a break from the norm. It's got some more sandbox elements. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you next time.